Hello, this is Schlecht from IronCrow AI, and today I'm going to be showing you how to respond to 101 rejection using the LLM Sandbox. So to start with, we've got all of the files related to an office action. This is something that you can automatically populate with our OA shell tool, or alternatively, you can upload all of these files yourself. You can do that in this context button here, upload any relevant files. And I'm going to walk through one example of a strategy or kind of a recipe that I use to, review, analyze, and then respond to 101 rejections. So to start with, we'll enter our kind of default initial prompt, which is going to ask the tool to summarize all the substantive issues raised in this office action and select just the relevant file for this prompt, which is the office action itself. So we'll submit that and get a nice high-level overview of everything that's going on. I believe in this office action, there are, prior art rejections and some other rejections, but we're just going to focus on the abstract idea 101 rejections. If you file a lot of software cases and get a lot of these types of rejections, this will be hopefully a very helpful example for you. So yes, we can see that we've got our independent claim one and some other claims have been rejected as abstract. Basically, they're asserted to be things that can be performed in the human mind. Um, that's pretty typical. So that's a high level overview. Let's get a more detailed look at that 101 rejection. So please provide a more detailed summary of the 101 rejection. So this will help us hopefully ascertain more of the actual rationale that the examiner is using in their 101 rejection. Unfortunately, it is often the case that rationales for these rejections don't consist of much more than just an assertion that the claim is abstract. So you often don't have a lot to work with, but never hurts to try. So we've got a more detailed analysis. Uh, Basically, it's going to look at the classic evaluation procedure from step one, step 2A, prong one, step 2A, prong two. So essentially, yeah, it does fall under one of the statutory categories. The office has identified that it does recite limitations which can be construed as mental processes that can be performed in the human mind, and then recites which specific limitations the examiner is asserting amount to simply mental processes, generating an obstacle detection map of a sensor region. I would love to see a human generate an obstacle detection map of a sensor region in their mind, but that's beyond this demo. Determine an overlap of the obstacle detection map and a projected door sweep region, and then associate an angle value with each array element. Okay. I won't go into the nitty-gritty of this rationale, but that's sufficient that we now have this rationale. So you can look at it and, form your own strategy about how to respond. But we're just going to proceed and have our tool recite claim one from the document that contains the most recent claim. So OA shell will produce an OA response draft or OA response template, and that will include a clean version of the claim. So we'll give it this OA shell generated draft, OA response draft, and then ask it to pull claim one from there. This isn't really necessary. I do this more for the sake of the demo so that you can see what claim one recites. But it's always good to have kind of your most important independent claim in the chat, or at least, just you need to be aware of what claim one recites. So here we have it. It's basically a control system for controlling the movement of a door, and it essentially determines an obstacle detection map in the vicinity of a sensor. Then the map comprises the location of an obstacle, and if present, it determines the overlap of an obstacle with the door sweep region and associates an angle value with each array element corresponding to the projected door sweep region, and then generates an output signal based on the determined overlap and the associated angle value So it's essentially controlling the door based off of where an obstacle overlaps with a projected trajectory or sweeping of that door as it opens. So that's what claim one recites. Fairly simple. Always good to have fairly simple claims for these demos. And let's go ahead and submit our next prompt. So we're going to ask our tool, based on the provided subject matter eligibility examples, analyze claim one above that we just pulled out. And then for subject matter, yeah, evaluate it for subject matter eligibility and provide insight into why this claim is or isn't subject matter eligible. So one of the nice things is we have a few knowledge bases within this tool. And one of them is the subject matter eligibility examples, which are about 140 different instances of claims that the USPTO has given as models for their examiners to look at and kind of to inform how they would evaluate subject matter eligibility in claims, how they would perform this 101 rejection analysis. So we're going to give this tool that knowledge and then ask it to evaluate our claim to see what it thinks, if it is subject matter eligible or not. All right. So it will then perform essentially the entire evaluation that an examiner would perform. Um, it does belong to a statutory category. The claim does recite some of these elements, which could be construed as judicial exceptions. And it's then referring that to an example, one of the examples in the provided subject matter eligibility examples we gave to this tool about digital image processing. Ultimately, its evaluation is that the claim is eligible because it does not recite an abstract idea. So it's saying actually that this example three was subject matter subject matter eligible, and yeah, the claim provides specific technological improvements to door control mechanisms. Okay, so that's its assessment. And then I'm going to tell the tool, thanks for the analysis, but the examiner believes these claims fail to integrate the judicial exception into a practical application. And then based on the subject matter eligibility examples, please provide some strategies for amending claim one to further emphasize its integration into a practical application. So we're going to have it reference these eligible examples from the USPTO's own guidance to inform or come up with a potential strategy for claim amendments we could make to our claim to overcome this one-on-one rejection. And that's the nice thing about having these knowledge bases. Um, it's just something that is a nice set of authoritative documents which are going to be useful in many instances. The subject matter eligibility examples are also helpful at the time of drafting an application. It can kind of help guide you if one of our like our 101 rejection prediction tool, if that says your claim is looking a little bit likely to be rejected as abstract, you could use this tool to come up with some strategies to potentially bolster that claim and harden it against some potential upcoming one-on-one rejections. So we've got some amendment ideas. We could add some meaningful control action limitations, follow example 46. Yeah, so it's referencing different examples. We could choose which of these strategies we like. I'm not going to actually evaluate that myself. I'm just gonna kind of continue and let the tool make these decisions. But I think the real power of this system, this interactive chat-based way of tackling these problems, is that you add your insight in addition to the tool's insight that it can pull from these huge corpuses of text. So that combination of human insight plus the ability for these tools to analyze huge amounts of text is what makes the tool powerful. The tools are pretty smart themselves. You can just ask them to do a lot of the thinking for you. I don't recommend that as the optimal approach, but basically for the sake of time, I tend to do that approach in these demos. But just know that it's better the more thought and comments and suggestions that you add into this back and forth with the AI, the more you add, the better the ultimate outcome will be, and the more it will reflect your own strategic decision making, and hopefully, result in a better outcome. So I'm going to say, yeah, please take into account the examiner's amendment suggestion that I think it mentioned above in one of its initial assessments. Yeah, the examiner suggests amending to clarify that the output signal controls movement of the door to potentially overcome. So that's really nice. It pulled out that the examiner actually suggested one approach to potentially overcome this 101 rejection, and we're essentially following up with that and saying, please take into account that examiner's suggestion and suggest an amendment which has the best chance of overcoming the 101 rejection while also maintaining reasonable claim scope. So I think in that case, we don't really need to provide it with any context documents, but we'll just give it the office action and our claims um, just just for the sake of that. Okay, so then it's coming back with that based on the examiner's suggestion that clarifying the nature of the generated signal such that it integrates the language similar to that which is in the preamble of the claim. Na, na, na. So, okay, the claim amendment that it comes up with in light of the examiner's suggestion is wherein the output signal directly controls movement of the door by limiting a maximum opening angle of the door to prevent collision with the detected obstacle. And I think that's the key that the examiner was hinting at is that this claim basically stopped short of actually interacting with the physical world. It had an output signal, but a signal as such, I think, at least in the mind of this examiner, didn't amount to more than an abstract idea. So we really needed to specify how that signal interacted with something physical in order to overcome this rejection. And that is the amendment that this tool has come up with pretty much by itself. I mean, we re-emphasized to it that the examiner mentioned that potential idea. But for the most part, I think this claim amendment looks good as is. Um, and we didn't really have to give too many constraints about what we needed this limitation to include. So it then talks about why that amendment is going to overcome the rejection. That's great. And then let's say, um, oh, let's see, that's the wrong prompt. My apologies. So we're going to say, that's great. Now, based on the provided examples of previously filed office action responses, so let's give it these sort of style examples of office action responses that I've drafted previously. Um, I'd like you to draft a response to the 101 rejection, um, noting that we have made the amendments to claim one. So I'm saying we are going to proceed with the claim amendment that you suggested, and please write remarks to kind of go along with that amendment to overcome the 101 rejection and make sure that those follow the style of these previous OA responses that I have drafted. So this approach, as you can see, is very back and forth. This is one style of how to respond to a 101 rejection. You can do things a bit faster, a bit different. But I think that this this back and forth, this kind of step-by-step evaluation of different pieces of information is helpful because it not only does it help the tool to kind of access the relevant pieces of information and build this chat history of really salient pieces of information, and also potential strategy recommendations. But it allows you to add your own insight into the chat history, which then will ultimately, hopefully, help the final output look better. So approaches that go a little bit faster tend to use less of your input, and I think then have a weakness that sometimes the AI gets it right, but often it needs your insight to really come to a conclusion which is going to be satisfactory to you and your client. So based on the provided examples, okay, so it's got the header for the 101 rejections. It then recites kind of the current rejection that we're addressing. And then applicant traverses the rejection. However, to expedite prosecution, we are going to make the following amendments. It then recites the amendment using markdown notation actually to indicate where the new limitations have been added. Then applicant submits that claim one integrates any alleged abstract idea into a practical application under step 2A prong 2 of the USPTO's subject matter eligibility. The claimed invention provides a specific technological improvement. Dun, dun, dun. The amended claims go beyond merely linking. Yeah, so the generated output signal is used to affect a real-world change, namely by directly controlling door movement through limiting the maximum opening angles based on detected obstacles. I think that's really the critical argument that the examiner is looking for. They wanted this claim to connect to the real world, and so that's good. The tool was able to kind of identify that that argument was necessary and is really goes along well with the amendment that we've made. And then also it's going to use some of its subject matter eligibility example information to sort of further bolster those examples. You can always edit that, but yeah, that's a pretty good first attempt at a response to this 101 rejection, including a relatively simple claim amendment in this case. Some cases are going to be more difficult, and you'll have to probably go through more rounds of back and forth with the AI to come up with a better solution. But at least in this case, I'm pretty happy with this outcome. You can then copy this response into a Word document, or preferably you'd copy this into the template that OA Shell produces. But you can always just copy it and put it into a Word document, and you can see everything's in, Times New Roman, font size 12. Um, and also it includes the correct markdown notation for these claim amendments. So one example of how to respond to a one-on-one rejection. One last thing I wanted to show you is that instead of going step by step like we did, you can also do things essentially in one shot. You can use the agent mode, which agent mode means that instead of you asking one question and the tool basically doing one action to satisfy that question or that query, you can give a more high-level task, and the tool will go through many iterations of actions, many different actions to accomplish that task using the documents that it has access to. So all of these context documents. And actually, this 101 example that I had saved, I had previously given this prompt to the tool using agent mode, and then this was the one-shot output that it produced. So I'll show you this prompt. So I basically said, I have provided you with an office action, which includes a one-on-one rejection, as well as the originally filed application for which this rejection was issued. The latest version of the claims can be found in the OA response draft, and I have also provided the MPEP and some subject matter eligibility examples issued by the USPTO. I would like you to generate a complete response to the 101 rejection in the office action, including any necessary claim amendments and providing arguments, remarks to go along with any amendments. And I want your arguments or remarks to closely follow the writing style and structure of the provided preferred OA response style examples, so those documents. And the amazing thing is this is pretty vague. This has no specific details about this case as such. It has no specific information. You could use this prompt with any 101 rejection, assuming that you have these files. So I am referencing files just because I want the tool to know where it should look to find certain pieces of information. And that's something that I know as a human. It might not know. All it can see are kind of these file names at first. So I'm telling the tool, the newest version of the claims is going to be in this file, and then these files are examples of what I want your response to look like. But other than that, I'm literally just saying, please respond to this 101 rejection. And this is what we get. So um, it made the amendment to the claim, and it ended up saying where in the output signal controls movement of the door to limit an extent of the door movement based on the location of the obstacle. I think that's almost exactly the same limitation that we came up with in the previous example, going much slower. So it was able to come up with this amendment itself, and it found the claim and then rewrote this claim in the correct markdown notation to indicate that amendment. And it lists all the other claims. It makes amendments to all of the independent claims and even one of the dependent claims. And it also has a complete remarks section. The remarks section I might want to tweak a little bit, but overall, it actually is very thorough. It cites in the detailed description or our originally filed application, it cites portions which kind of support our arguments. And it also, I think, yeah, it mentions some of the examples from the subject matter eligibility example. So it's able to draw on the information in all of these documents. And actually, I guess I selected these two as well when I made this prompt initially. So it's able to draw on all that information to synthesize something which, besides some very minor formatting changes, is essentially a complete response to this 101 rejection. So just an illustration that the agent mode, although not always perfect because it lacks a little bit of human guidance, it can be incredibly powerful and it can one-shot certain types of problems, especially I would say less complicated problems. I think this 101 rejection is fairly straightforward. In more complicated cases, you probably need to give more attention to the case, and you probably can't just have the tool do everything itself. But yeah, just as an illustration, that is possible. So thank you for your time. Hopefully this helps with your 101 rejections and makes you a little bit less stressed out the next time you see a 101 rejection in an office action. I will talk to you again soon with another demo. Thank you.